Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be with all of you today and appreciate you taking time to learn and talk about this really important topic. It's affecting all of us across the state, and there are some things that we can do together to help protect folks. So, my name is Kelsey Heilman. I'm a supervising attorney with Oregon Law Center. If you're not familiar with Oregon Law Center, we are a statewide provider of free civil legal representation to low-income Oregonians. We represent lots and lots of immigrant clients in all kinds of different types of civil legal matters. Sometimes it's housing, but we also do cases that are about employment and public benefits and civil rights and family law and domestic violence. So we are thinking a lot about the things that we can do and the limits to what we can do to keep folks safer and help them prepare during this sort of unprecedented time in recent history of immigration enforcement in our communities. Oh, there we go. So today we're going to do a very brief overview of recent changes to U.S. immigration enforcement policy. Uh, we will talk about the basic legal rules, constitutional and otherwise, that protect people in their homes and in other places. We're going to talk nuts and bolts about ways that you can plan for and respond to ICE agents at a property, an arrest or detention by ICE, whether that is of a tenant or of an employee. And then rumors of ICE enforcement in the community, which are pretty rampant right now. And then we'll talk about resources that you might share with tenants to help them plan for and respond to those same issues. What we're not going to do today, unfortunately, is solve immigration issues or stop the ICE activity in our communities. Those are things that the law does not give us good tools to do. Um, Obviously, there are lots of very important social and political processes happening that I hope are going to lead to a stop to what's happening right now. But this presentation today sort of takes as a given that this increased enforcement is happening and talks about what we might do to better prepare and plan on a community level. We're also not going to talk about individual cases or confidential information. I think it's pretty unlikely in a group of 200 that folks are going to ask questions like that. But please remember, this is a public space. And even though I'm a lawyer, I'm not your lawyer. And we don't have an attorney-client privilege relationship. And so this is not a place to share immigration status information about anyone or specific case information about anyone. So let's start by looking at what is happening. I'm sure you all are seeing all the headlines like I am seeing the headlines, and many of you are probably in real life seeing what's happening in your communities because across the state, there is a huge increase in ICE enforcement that is happening. And we are seeing it, you know, in every part of Oregon right now. So ICE enforcement is happening, and then there are all of these changes to the rules that govern the legal processes for folks to, try to follow the regulations and adjust their status in a way that's blessed by the law. Those rules are also being changed, and the ground is kind of shifting under everyone's feet as we speak. So, one thing that you are going to hear me talk about today over and over is how destabilizing this is for communities and how there's the impact of the actual changes, and then there's this sort of big cloud of how it hangs over everything, like the possibility of this happening to each family and in every community. And that is having all kinds of effects that stretch well beyond the more than 60,000 folks who are in immigration detention now, which is a modern high. Um, so we won't have time to go over all of the immigration changes, but relevant to what we're talking about today, there has been a widespread and intentional and very public campaign to boost detention and removal. So boost the number of people who are sent out of the country, sometimes to the country that they came from, sometimes to some other random country. Um, and there also is a widespread campaign to boost detention, meaning increase the numbers of people who have to be incarcerated while they are waiting for their legal immigration process to proceed. Um, the target nationally was set at 1,200 arrests per day. The administration has fallen short of that target, but there has been a huge increase in the number of people arrested per day nationally. Originally, this was messaged as priority targeting. So supposedly they were going after folks with serious criminal records and then making what they call collateral arrests, which is like to boost the numbers, you just kind of try to pick up anyone who is around the priority target. We now know from national reporting that actually a very small share of the folks who have been arrested and detained have criminal histories, and it is overwhelmingly people who do not have criminal histories or any factors that would support dangerousness that are being incarcerated under these policies. Um, this is part of a deliberate fear campaign, which is designed to make it scary to be in the United States for all kinds of immigrants, including people who are who came here in a fully legal way with complete knowledge of the U.S. government. There have been lots of aspects to this fear campaign. One of them you might remember very early in the administration is they ended the protected area designation of places like schools and churches, leading to lots of fear and rumors that ICE was going to come pick people up inside public schools and inside churches. So far, that has not happened in Oregon. Um, we're seeing a heightened presence of officers, ICE officers in communities, and unfortunately, there is race-based policing happening. And that race-based policing, so far, the U.S. Supreme Court, when presented with the question, said, "Yeah, that's okay. You can take the color of someone's skin into account when you're deciding who you're going to target." So, until this year, I would have said that's illegal. The Supreme Court seems to maybe not agree with that position. Um, and the effects, like I was saying, these extend far beyond those detained. So we are seeing, I'm sure you all are seeing a huge reduction in vulnerable populations accessing essential services. So just one little snapshot, my organization does in-person clinics in some of the more rural areas of the state, including here in Astoria, where I live. Um, we have seen a drop almost to zero of Latino clients walking in for consultations. And we are talking to our community partners, and they report that even outreach for support, by phone has decreased. So we're talking about, utility assistance, rent assistance, um, those sorts of things that folks were usually reaching out about. We're seeing particular populations just stop connecting for those resources. We are also seeing an increase in people choosing to leave and hypervigilance for everybody who's in these communities, everybody who has a family member or a friend who could be affected. And again, that is part of the intent. That's part of the deliberate fear campaign. And we don't have to guess at that. They've been saying out loud that that's what they're trying to do. So that's a lot of bad news. And I am now going to talk about what some of the basic legal principles are that protect folks in these interactions. And then we will be translating that into some practical resources and practical considerations as you think about what policies you might enact at your properties for resident services managers, for property managers. So we're going to start with the U.S. Constitution. The Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, most people are very familiar with this one because it is a central feature of every police procedural that you've ever watched. And it involves the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. So what does that mean? It means that for the police to arrest you, right? Tell you that you're not free to go, um, or stop you to question you, or search your house or your car or what you're carrying, in your pants pockets. All of that is subject to this rule about reasonableness. Um, and the government needs a sufficiently good reason to invade your privacy interests. And there's a two-part test. So the Fourth Amendment protects against searches and seizures if you personally have a real expectation of privacy in the place or the thing searched. So you believe in good faith that it's a private area that is not just open to the general public. And we'll talk about public versus non-public spaces in a minute. And then the second part of the test is that society recognizes that expectation as reasonable. So, I could, believe that if I go into the town square and, am doing something there, that that's a place where I'm entitled to privacy. But because everyone can see me, society is going to say that's not a reasonable expectation of privacy. In your home, your right to privacy is the strongest, and the Fourth Amendment protections are the strongest. Um, if there's a reasonable expectation of privacy in general, access by law enforcement, including by ICE, is going to require either a judicial warrant, and we're going to talk about what that means, or consent. And one of the main things we're going to talk about today is training of um, staff and helping people practice how to not give consent because it's hard to do in the moment, but it is a constitutional right to not provide it. So first, let's talk about public versus non-public spaces. Public spaces, this is anywhere that is generally open to the public. So if any member of the public can go somewhere, ICE agents can also go there. So the parking lots, waiting rooms, lobbies, customer areas. And there are lots of places where just anyone is allowed to walk in, right? Anyone's allowed to walk into Walmart. ICE can also go into Walmart, right? Anyone's allowed to walk into Home Depot. And ICE can also go into Home Depot. So these can be intentionally constructed as public spaces or functional. Because if it's a place where like it could be a private area, but general access is not being consistently limited, then it is a public space, right? Again, the question is like, could anyone off the street go there? If yes, ICE can go there too. Um,
Apenas termine de colgar con esa gente.
um,
Apenas.
So, and again, that means no reasonable expectation of privacy. So there's not going to be a limit on ICE going there, observing what's happening, right? Um, Private spaces, these are places where the general public is not allowed. So examples, non-public areas of a courthouse, places for employees such as break rooms, storage areas, and factory floors. Public schools, right? You can't go into your kid's school unless you hit that buzzer and the office lets you in. Inside public schools, that is not a public space. And actually, usually the area around the public school is also not a public space. There are signs up, right? You're only allowed to be there if you're a student or you work there or you're the family of a student. Um, Entry to private areas is only legal with proper consent. Again, you have the right to withhold that consent or a judicial search warrant. So, what is a judicial warrant? Um, there are two kinds of warrants that you need to know about to understand the warrant requirement when we're talking about constitutional rights. So, a judicial warrant appears on the left side of your screen. This is a warrant that a federal court judge or magistrate has issued to arrest a particular person or search a particular place or seize a particular thing. A warrant like this is a legitimate, enforceable warrant, and compliance with that warrant is legally required. But note, it's going to be very specific in what it says. And so what you have to let them do then is only what is written in the warrant. On the right-hand side, you see an example of what's called an administrative warrant. This is issued by an agency like the Department of Homeland Security, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, ICE, or an immigration judge or an immigration court. These warrants do not authorize a search, and compliance is not required to search an area. So when if for example, ICE were to show up with an administrative warrant and ask, does this person live here? You do not have to provide that information in response to the administrative warrant. They would need a judicial warrant signed by a judge. This kind of warrant does authorize the arrest of a particular person. If they see that person in a public space, the warrant provides justification to arrest that person. Um, okay, so how does this apply? In your home, like I said, you have the strongest protection inside your home, the greatest reasonable expectation of privacy, right? The strongest justification required by the government to invade that privacy. This applies whether you rent or own your home. Entry to the home is with a judicial warrant or consent. Someone opens the door and lets you in. Limited exceptions. Law enforcement can go through a door without a warrant or consent to render emergency aid. Someone's inside screaming that they need help. There's also an exception called hot pursuit. So if law enforcement are pursuing someone and that person runs inside a home and shuts the door, they are allowed to go through that door without a warrant and without consent to apprehend the person if they have observed the person committing a crime or if they have a warrant for their arrest or other probable cause to believe that they've committed a crime. So we're not talking about that situation. We're talking about ICE comes and knocks on the door. So the advice for everyone, even though it's hard when someone in a uniform is sitting outside your door, is do not open the door. Pass a red card under the door. I hope everyone in this call has seen the red cards. They've got it's like I do not consent to you entering my home. I exercise my right to an attorney. All of those things. You pass that under the door. Don't open the door. You have the right to remain silent. You don't have to answer questions. You can call an attorney. It is true that right now ICE is not honoring these rights all the time and is without consent going into places. And so in that situation, you have a right to film what's happening or record what's happening. Um, your front porch, your driveway, your sidewalk, a courtyard, are those private spaces too? It depends. Can the general public go there? Or are they restricted to just you? And also, what we're seeing is ICE is arresting people, in their driveways. So inside the home is where this protection is the strongest. Another question that comes up frequently is what about in a car? So ICE, like any other law enforcement entity, can stop a vehicle with what's called reasonable suspicion that there's been a violation of the law. And when you're pulled over, you do have to provide the driver, must provide your driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance. Passengers should not be required to provide ID. Um, ICE can order people to get out of the vehicle, the driver and the passengers, and they don't need a warrant to do that. This is based on old case law around officer safety. And I'm sure many of you have heard reports that when folks do not get out of their car, ICE is breaking windows and sometimes injuring folks in removing people from their vehicles. You have a right to object to the search of the vehicle. So even though when you're driving your car, you're no longer in your home, ICE can see that you're there. They have a warrant for your arrest. They can tell you to get out of your car. They're not allowed to search the vehicle um, without your consent or a warrant because you have a reasonable expectation to keep things, private in your car. Um, Again, call an attorney, right to remain silent. And, we're just telling people that, there are these rights and invoking your rights is important, but also when you're dealing with law enforcement who are routinely disregarding those rights, it can create physically dangerous situations. So folks are going to have to make decisions about what is most likely to keep them bodily safe. Finally, at work. So I know that many people on this call are probably balancing concerns about tenant exposure to ICE enforcement, and also you have employees who are worried about ICE enforcement. And so just keep in mind that at work, it's really helpful if staff have a clear idea of this is the plan if ICE comes. So everyone on your team should know who has authority in the workplace to consent to a search. And it should probably be a really small number of people because you need somebody, maybe in consultation with a lawyer, who's going to like look at the warrant and see what's going on. Staff can say and can practice saying and be trained to say, this is a private area. You cannot enter without a judicial warrant signed by a sitting judge. You might consider posting signs that indicate that it's a private space. I'm seeing these popping up all over the place in my community on the doors of churches and local businesses. Um, you can remain silent and remind staff and train them on the right to remain silent. One really important thing is not to run if ICE enters a workplace. Running can create a reason for ICE to give chase and detain people. Running away is one of the things the courts have said they're allowed to consider when they're deciding whether to arrest someone. Just a quick note about harboring. Um, it is a federal crime to conceal, harbor, or shield someone from detection by immigration authorities. And so, again, the really important thing here is your staff need really clear rules. Um, Enforcing a generally applicable rule about access to a unit or your files or a restricted area, that is not harboring. Even if there's someone in a unit that you know or have reason to believe could be vulnerable to ICE enforcement, right? The rule is, I'm sorry, we don't let people into tenant units. And you have to think, would I let someone who wasn't in a law enforcement uniform into this person's building? Like just if a random person walked off the street and said, "Oh, can you let me into the apartment where, um, Mr. Jones lives?" If the answer is no, then not for ICE either, unless they've got that judicial warrant that we talked about. Um, I'm going to talk very quickly about the Sanctuary Promise Act. Oregon is a sanctuary state. We have the oldest sanctuary law in the country. It dates from the early 1980s. And our law says that state and local agencies cannot enforce immigration laws, criminal or civil. And when there's a violation, any person can file an action to enforce in court. We're going to talk in the next couple of slides about what this means and where there might be a violation. Um, but if you have reason to believe that a state or local government agency or worker while on the job is helping in any way with immigration enforcement, then you can report online with the Oregon Department of Justice. So there's an online reporting form that's available in 8 languages, and there's also a hotline, 1-844-924-STAY, Spanish direct line. Any language that you need pretty much is going to be available with interpretation. You can talk to a live operator Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and leave voicemails or emails requesting a call back. Okay, so what does the Sanctuary Promise Act actually do and not do? So the first thing to know is that it governs the actions of state and local agencies. So who is that? That's your sheriff, your local police department, staff at the jail, staff at the state court, parole and probation officers, the DMV, state agencies like the Oregon Health Authority and the Oregon Department of Education, public libraries, a school's public health clinics, the school itself. So anything that is part of the state or local government, none of those people should be doing anything that helps in any way with criminal or civil immigration enforcement by the feds. Um, the Sanctuary Promise Act does not control private individuals. So if a neighbor is calling ICE, that is not a violation of the Sanctuary Promise Act. It's just mean. Um, Federal immigration authorities, U.S. Marshals, federal judges, United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. So the Sanctuary Promise Act does not control what federal workers can do in the state of Oregon. And it doesn't give us the power to keep people out of the state of Oregon or stop them from doing immigration enforcement, subject to those public spaces rules that we just talked about. Second, is it permissible or not permissible activity? So when is that list of local and state entities allowed to ask questions about immigration status, keep information about immigration status, or provide information that's related to immigration enforcement. So it's a very limited list. So to determine eligibility for public benefits, we do have benefits in the state where your immigration status depends. So that's an allowable thing for state and local officials to collect just for the purpose of determining eligibility. It's okay to share information that's available to the general public. This is kind of like the public spaces idea. So if anyone can call the jail and say, what time is this prisoner being released? And they will answer that question. ICE can also call the jail and they can answer that question, but they can't give the information to ICE in a way that they wouldn't give it to the general public. They're allowed to make arrests based on judicial warrants signed, share information based on judicial subpoenas, and they can enforce state and municipal laws. Um, but with very limited exceptions, state and local law enforcement cannot ask about or collect information about a place of birth or someone's immigration status, help ICE agents with an arrest, hold someone in jail at the request of ICE or because they are facing only federal criminal immigration charges, or tell ICE when someone is going to be released from jail to give them a heads up. A few tenant resources. So the PERC hotline, despite the fact that Portland is in the name, this is a statewide resource. And the best number to share with folks when there is an emergency. So you call this number. If you are witnessing ICE presence, suspected or confirmed, you can take photos and text them. If you have witnessed or have information about an ICE detention, or, and this is happening more and more commonly, you are looking for a missing loved one who you think may have been detained by ICE, but you're not sure. Other resources that you can share, family preparedness packets. This is a joint project of Latino Network and Oregon Law Center. It's a packet of forms and instructions designed to help families collect important documents and get some forms signed ahead of time so that there is a plan for children in the event that a parent or caretaker is apprehended by ICE. Know your rights for tenants and families. Lots of organizations are putting out really good materials. There's a link here to the ACLU of Oregon's materials. And then Innovation Law Lab has a very comprehensive booklet about preparing for ICE encounters, knowing your rights, what to do when someone has been detained. Okay, so what, as housing providers, what do you do with all of this information, and what are the ways to figure out how to protect um, your staff and your tenants and the community? So you've heard me say it before. I think the most important thing is to have a clear plan and to make sure that staff understand what it is and ideally have practiced it. So, what's your plan before ICE agent shows up? Do you have clear rules about who has decision-making authority? Who's allowed to decide? If a law enforcement officer shows up and says, I want to look through your files, I want to know what unit this person lives in, I want to know what time this person usually comes home from work. What are the rules? Who can make a decision about whether to say yes or no when the person hands a piece of paper over and it says warrant on it? Really clear rules about that. Do you have clear rules about public and private spaces, and are those being consistently enforced? Most of the properties that you're working on are private property. Is that a rule that's being enforced when someone who's not supposed to be there is on the property? Are they being asked to leave? Do you have signage posted that says this is private property? Are there locks? Are there buzzers? Are there other security? Have you safely identified your staff at the lowest risk? So are there folks who are the better people to have the conversation with ICE agents about this is private property? Can you please leave if that needs to happen? Do your staff have a script for interactions with ICE? Practice. And then have you provided resources to residents about their rights, about your policies, about how to plan? For example, those family preparedness packets, can your resident services providers be somebody who knows where the forms are collected and what the plan is, who the person should be contacted for the kids? During and after an ICE interaction, follow the script and the plan. So staff should be comfortable with phrases like, "This is private property. Can you please leave? I don't have authority to turn over that file. Let me call my supervisor. I'm sorry, I can't provide that information. It's private." Or if they're moving forward anyway, "I object to this search. I don't consent. This is private property." And just a flag, stay tuned. Some folks on this call might know there are possible changes this legislative session coming that are going to clarify tenant file privacy rules for landlords with a goal of protecting tenant data privacy and protecting landlords from getting dragged in to be immigration enforcers when that's not what they want to do. During or after an ICE interaction, you should give your staff clear instruction about documentation. Can and should they take video? Can and should they take photos? Offer support after and during an arrest. So if someone's being detained, ask, "Who do you want us to contact?" Right? And then contact that person and then connect the family to local resources. These are really scary and traumatic events when they happen. It's so important and useful to have a plan ahead of time and to have given people an opportunity to practice it and to ask questions. That is the thing that makes it most likely that folks will stick to the rules when something actually happens. Um, so uh, there are so many reports about ICE enforcement going around, and some of them are real and some of them are not. And so what you want is to, and this is sort of beyond like your professional roles. I kind of think all of us in our communities, when we think about when you hear these rumors, we're balancing two things, right? We want to protect people when the threat is real, and we want to avoid spreading fear and misinformation. We don't want to be inadvertent agents of that intentional fear campaign, right? I can't tell you how many rumors I've heard about ICE going into public schools in the last year. Every single one of them in Oregon has turned out to not be true. So these rumors fly and there are real consequences. And so, what I encourage you to do and what I encourage your staff to do is to really run down the source before you are spreading that information. And the phrase we suggest for that is, "Thank you for looking out for our community. Where did you get this information?" There are sources of information, like if the information is coming from PERC or from Pueblo Unido or some of the other groups that are deeply engaged in this ICE Watch activity, when you would want to get that information out to the community so that folks can be safe. But a lot of times, especially if it's just on social media, it's a scary rumor that's going to make the scary time worse without offering any actual protection. So trace it back. Don't pass those messages along without understanding what the source is. That is the end of my content, and I think we could move to the question and answer session now.
Thank you all. We are waiting for questions.
Would the slides be available to us? I didn't have a chance to take pictures of those hotline numbers and stuff
Absolutely.
fast enough.
I don't know what the best way to, I mean, I can just drag it into the Zoom chat maybe, but
Yeah, that'd be fun.
and then I don't know if Christina, if you guys have a way of like posting it or making it available.
Yes, we will have this presentation in our Housing Oregon website. So you just search Housing Oregon. They will be there. And then we have a YouTube channel, which Kevin posted in the chat. Okay.
Christina,
Uh-huh.
I,
this is Brian. Just to confirm, Kelsey, did you want us to stop recording now?
Um, I think it is. Maybe let's keep recording and then we could do like turn it off just in case there's somebody who's like holding their question to the very
Okay.
end. But I think this Q&A session can be useful for people. So,
quick question from Michael.
mm,
Recently, through my organization, Mercy Teams, we work with a lot of Latino working poor families, and we've had some recent ICE detentions. And we've used ECO,
mhm.
as a reporting organization. Is that just the simple question? Is that like the best route, to get quick legal service, or are there better routes?
This is making me realize that I can't believe I didn't put an Echo slide in this presentation. So Echo is the clearinghouse for immigration representation, right? And
Mhm.
so you get navigated in there. In most circumstances, the wait time will be long. So
Yes.
I think it is where people should be directed. And also, demand is so overwhelming right now that people
Mhm.
are not getting connected to attorneys quickly. So, another thing that's super important is when you're working with people, tell them to get navigated into Echo now, right? Instead of waiting for the moment of crisis, because then you're gonna move your way up the wait list, get your consultation sooner.
So,
Mhm.
can I just ask a
Yeah.
follow-up question on that? So, are you saying that if you if you are undocumented and in fear,
Mhm.
enter your information?
That's what I would do. I mean, Echo is it's only for people below 200% of the poverty line. So I guess that's one limitation. But yeah, if you're in Oregon, you're below 200% of the poverty line and you need help with an immigration issue, then you qualify. Um, and so I think it's a good idea to get navigated into Echo now rather than later. I'm not sure what order to do these in. Should I start doing some chat? I see hands up and I also see chat
Let's
questions.
do the hands up, and then
Okay.
if Kevin can post say the questions aloud for the chat in the order they came, that will be great. But team, and then not Lynn.
Okay.
Hi, Tim Black with St. Vincent Paul, Blaine County. Thanks for the presentation. Is there a reasonable expectation of time if staff are trained to call in a supervisor or call in the person of authority of how long they can safely wait?
You mean like if they're being asked to so the only time when ICE has a would have a right to do the search is if they had a signed judicial warrant, and I'm just going to tell you they never do.
Mhm.
So, um, I don't, I think your staff is going to like feel that increasing pressure with the weight, of course, and that's what they're counting on is they want people to feel so uncomfortable that they then say, okay, fine, I consent, you can do it. And so there's no rule about that. Um, in the very unlikely event they have an actual signed judicial warrant, they don't have to wait for you to sign off on it. They can just go in and do the search, right? And I do think it's important to tell your staff that you would never expect them to like put themselves in physical harm's way to stop someone who's coming in to do a search or something like that. Um, but yeah, there's not like a rule about timing.
Is it true then that if we train staff, call for a supervisor, but ICE proceeds anyway,
Mhm.
that should be in their script to say, I do not consent to this before I've had a chance to check with mine. Okay.
Yes, and if they can record it, even better. So, like a recording of staff saying no consent, that would be very good evidence. And it's not going to stop the search right then, but it could help later in a constitutional rights enforcement suit.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Natalie.
I think you meant Nadine. Nadine,
Oh,
do you want to unmute?
yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I'm just wondering, so talking about public spaces versus private spaces, you mentioned that generally businesses are public spaces.
Mhm.
I'm wondering because there was recently an incident in Louisiana where an employee of like a convenience store kept ICE out and using the legal justification that they can refuse service to anybody. Does that hold? Like, 'cause that's yeah, or is that really not really something you would advise people to do?
I think it's unclear. Like that's a real thing. And there definitely are, I mean, I mentioned like the signs on the churches around here. Like I'm seeing lots and lots of more like everyone is welcome except ICE signs.
Yeah.
Worth a shot. I don't know what would happen if that were litigated, but sure.
Totally.
Like if you can do that, again, it's like if they're going to physically insist to overcome the objection, I would want to be super clear with staff that you don't expect them to put themselves in danger. But yeah, Yeah, if you can say like, no, see this sign, that's your ice and you can't come in. Sure.
Okay.
Okay, Kevin, take it away with the chat questions, please.
Okay, so we have a couple questions about how to like if folks can look up a warrant. We have some questions related to um like can you share your own information like your email address?
Oh, like me? Yeah, sure.
Yes, you.
Hmm.
Um we have a question here. Uh
Apartment number? Yeah.
if IDs are getting confiscated and are said fake, what recommendations do you have for those people?
Okay. All right. So I'm going to start with the warrants. So if it's a judicial warrant, um, I think you could call the court and ask about it. Um, but we haven't heard examples, like I have not heard that ICE is making a fake judicial warrant. What they're doing is using the administrative warrant, which says the word warrant on it, and giving it to people and saying we have a warrant. And then people don't understand the difference and they think like, oh, it's the same, so we have to comply. Um, so I think for me, at least based on what we're seeing so far, it's less like checking the validity of the warrant and more having a designated person who can look at it and say that's not a judicial warrant, like no. And so then we don't consent. Um, all right.
Yvette?
Just one second, because there were a few questions wrapped there into Brian's. What was the other thing? I put my information in the chat. What was the last thing you said?
If IDs are getting confiscated and they're declared fake, so if people's documentation are getting confiscated, what
Hmm.
should people do?
Uh, are they getting confiscated when the person is detained?
Nick, do you want to unmute and clarify your question?
Yeah, I mean, it's just some things that I've heard on online. I haven't really like seen it myself, but just I guess general recommendations. Should people hand over their ID or like are there specific things that like how can they protect themselves? Just I guess just from that general concern.
So if you're driving, you have to provide ID. If it's happening in another situation, then in general, you don't have to provide ID. Um, and you, you know, I think in general, people don't want to be walking around like with their foreign passports on them or anything like that. Um, uh, I, I mean, you can't do anything in the moment, so I guess
Mhm.
it would just be you go to the issuing source and try to get a replacement ID.
Well, so
Um,
would you say it's better that people don't hand them over so that way they could like their lawyer could have it or things along those lines, or does that not really matter?
I mean, I think for individual people, we didn't talk a lot about the individual phrases that people can ask, but you can say, am I under arrest? Am I free to go? And then you walk away. Um, you can say something like, I don't want to provide identification. Am I under arrest? Those kinds of questions. And in that moment, you're not required to give them information. You're not required to answer questions.
Um, Kelsey, do you have any best practices for what happens when you see ICE presence either on campus or near a community space or like a school?
Yeah, so that is a situation where you want to call PERC. And then most places in most communities now have kind of like a MigroWatch like network. And so if you don't know who that is in your community, um, figure it out. That can be part of your planning. And letting folks know about ICE presence at a place like a school. I will go, those folks are going to have like the sort of distribution channels for notifying people.
Before you do another question, Kevin,
Mhm.
Yvette, and then we'll take one and one.
Okay, I don't know if I'm gonna say this right, but you mentioned that parking lots and stores and all of that are public
Mhm.
places or anywhere where they anybody could just walk into.
Mhm.
So would this mean that our office spaces are considered public places since we can't really close the door for people to come in and apply and do all of that. So, and then obviously our parking spots, I would say, with the apartment complexes, they considered public spaces because people are able to park there to go into the office.
Mm-hmm.
So are they allowed to just go in there and park in our communities and then pretty much harass our tenants and wait for them to come out?
Yeah, great question. So, if anyone can walk into the lobby area, that's a public space. So yes. Um, but you can enforce the same rules against ICE that you would enforce against anyone else, or at least you can tell them that those are the rules, right? So, what would you do if there were a random person who just came and parked in the parking lot? They don't live there and they sat there for 3 hours. Is that allowed or not? If that is not allowed, then ICE also is not allowed to do it. Same thing, like if you walk into the lobby, right? You're just going to let like a random person walk into the lobby and just sit there for 4 hours. If the answer to that is no, then you can ask ICE to leave too.
We have lots of variations of questions about, is there any signage that people can put up to make spaces more private, I guess?
Mm-hmm. So we don't have sample signage. I mean, Oregon Law Center represents tenants. We don't represent businesses. And so we don't have example signs, but lots of people are making them right now. I think if you, like I bet if Christina reached out to the Housing Oregon group, there would be folks who are posting those signs who might be willing to share some examples of what they were using.
Kevin, Kelsey, this is Brian with Housing
Yeah,
Oregon.
great.
In the link that we've provided with resources on our webpage and the email that went out for this event, at the very bottom, there were links to some examples of signs. They're not the
Great.
highest quality, but they're examples.
Yeah, so maybe get your graphic design team on taking the content and making it prettier.
Kelsey,
That's
quick
great.
question.
Mm-hmm.
Michael. So recently, we had an individual that we were working with that was detained, sent to Hillsborough, and then sent to Tacoma
Uh-huh.
without a criminal record, but undocumented.
Mm-hmm.
How long can that individual be held in the Tacoma Center without legal representation, or how long do they have the right to hold them even with legal representation if there's no criminal record?
So an individual can be held at Tacoma. There's no like limit on how long they can be withheld. They can be held, and there's no right to counsel in the way that there is a right to counsel in a criminal proceeding, meaning that the government does not have to pay for a lawyer. The person has a right to a lawyer if they can find one, but there's no right to immigration representation that's paid for by the government. There are two ways that people who are detained can be released. One is through a process called habeas, which is a federal court proceeding. And some attorneys in Oregon are having great success filing these very quickly when an arrest happens, because if you can get it filed while the person is still in Oregon, then if there's not like a changed circumstance reason to put the person in detention, then there have been a set of people that judges here have ordered released. Separately, there's a right to a bond hearing, and a judge has to consider whether you can be held, but only if you're a flight risk or a danger to the community. Otherwise, they have to let you go, but they can require you to pay money. And Northwest Immigrants' Rights Project is litigating a class action right now over the denial and delay of bond hearings for folks in Tacoma. So if this person wants a bond hearing, you can contact, I will put their information in the chat. They're doing a weekly mass bond hearing requests for folks to try to get more people bond hearings and released. However, you mentioned something that I find very concerning, which is that this person was initially held in Hillsborough and then transferred to.
Yes, that's correct.
So I don't want to talk any more about details of that case, but that sounds like a Sanctuary Promise Act violation to me. And I would be very interested in talking to this person's family if they are interested in talking to me.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks.
So we have a question is there any instances of people getting their accounts frozen or becoming unbanked as a result of immigration action?
I've heard rumors about that happening, but I don't know if it's actually happening.
Is there any partnership available with local district attorney offices in relation to getting access to information about ICE? I believe Manuel asked that question.
Hmm. What kind of information about ICE?
Manuel, do you want to unmute and clarify
Yeah,
if you're
something
still here?
related to the DA's office. Is that this question?
Yes.
I saw that the district attorney's office said that they wanted to take some kind of reports about federal agents breaking laws.
Great.
I mean, they do this regularly. They use plates that don't belong in vehicles all the time. So I'm just wondering if you all have any advice regarding what kind of reports the DA's office is taking, or yeah, how helpful it is in
So
general.
it's news to me that district attorneys' offices locally are interested in this information, but that's great. And I would recommend that you call your local district attorney's office and say, what do you want?
And I
Like,
think,
what kind of information could we provide?
okay,
So I think we have time for three more questions. Let's go
Hmm.
Claire, and then there's a question by Steve Nielsen in the chat, and I think we're gonna maybe want him to explain a little bit more. So Claire or Clar? Okay. I don't think that maybe they're having trouble with their audio.
Yeah, sure.
So Steve
Can you hear
asks,
me now?
Yes.
yes.
Oh, good, awesome. I've been talking and nobody hear me. So sorry. So, Kelsey, one question that it comes to my mind now after you say something, when somebody has been transferred from Tacoma to another state,
Hmm.
is that illegal? That's what you mean?
No. So
Oh,
transfer from Tacoma to another state. I mean, maybe it's illegal, but it's not. I don't have any reason to think that it's illegal. What I am concerned about is anytime someone whose only charges are immigration related being held in a local jail for any amount of time.
oh, I hear you. Oh,
So the
okay.
problem that the thing that pinged for me is this person was arrested, held in Hillsborough, and then taken to Tacoma. That says to me that somebody's coming through a local jail using local
Mhm.
resources, but what they're on their way to is an immigration enforcement. That is not allowed under state Sanctuary Promise Act.
Oh, okay, good. Oh, okay, hear you. So the other one that I have very quick, it is when you mentioned something about when immigration with ICE come into your home,
Yeah.
even if you try to not open the door or ignore them or whatever, but they what can, because like for example, I sometimes leave my door unlocked. So if they
Hmm.
what can, and you say don't run, I think people
Hmm.
who runs is because they're scared they're gonna be arrested.
Yeah. Yes.
But in the same time, I should stay and wait until they decide if they want to let me to identify myself as a U.S. citizen or not. I'm scared for me and my children, even though we're citizens, you know. So,
Yes.
what is happening after that?
Yeah. So, the reason we say don't run is they're going to catch you,
Mm-hmm.
and it increases the likelihood that anyone will be detained.
Gotcha. Okay.
I'm so
So
sorry. I know this is such a scary time for so many people.
it is. It is. So it doesn't
Yeah.
matter whatever is gonna happen after. It's just don't run because it's gonna be even worse.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that we can say. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Okay, so last question is we have in Lane County, are employees at a management company get in trouble or harass them for not helping ICE?
That's been happening? Is that,
I,
oh. Can employees at a management company get in trouble or harass them for not helping ICE? Like can ICE harass them? I think I need more information about who the harasser is.
yeah. Steve, do you want to clarify?
Can we assume both scenarios? Like if the harasser is a workman?
So, um, you know, like I said, private entities, including property management companies, like that's not governed by the Sanctuary Promise Act. So each property management company is going to make its own rules. I hope this question is not can the like they get in trouble with their bosses at the property management company for not helping ICE. Um, so I'm going to assume this question is like about retaliation.
Yes.
Uh-huh. So can that can that happen? Yes. Uh, not get in trouble, but like, could there be retaliation? Yes. But I haven't heard I haven't heard about that happening. I think
Okay.
that yeah. Yeah. So, if that were I think we would need facts about like what is the harassment that's happening because there could be uh there might be claims there depending on what's going on. That would be an interesting time to interact with an attorney if there were ICE retaliation against a private individual for not, giving consent to search or something.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we are out of time, folks. I'm gonna pass it over to Christina to take us out. I am sorry that we are crunched on time.
Thank you so much, Kevin. So thank you all for being here. We have two special invitations. One is to do a meaningful donation to Housing Oregon. If you go to our webpage, you can do a meaningful donation there. Also consider donating to Oregon Law Center. They are also a nonprofit organization and been helping a lot. So thank you again. Thank you to elected officials again for being here. And at Housing Oregon webpage, we created a link that is called Keep Families Together, where the information that Brian was sharing about signs and resources is there. It's a tab that is called Keeping Families Together. So thank you all for being here and show up to yourself and to your community.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Kelsey. Bye-bye.